She grew up anyway. Ireland built her own career as a model, signed to agencies in multiple countries, and picked up acting and DJ work along the way. She's used her platform to talk openly about things a lot of people her age don't get real airtime for: body image, mental health, and what it's actually like to become famous simply because of who your father is, without ever auditioning for the role. In 2018, she posed for an anti-fur campaign, echoing a similar shoot her mother had done decades earlier. And she's been a vocal supporter of animal rights causes ever since. She hasn't been shy about calling out the media when she feels she's been misquoted or misrepresented, and she's spoken publicly at different points about both the pain and the more recent stability in her relationship with her father. There's also a generational gap worth pointing out. Ireland went through her hardest years with Alec, the leaked voicemail, the custody fight, the slow process of rebuilding trust, without the kind of public vocabulary around boundaries and family estrangement that exists now. She worked through it in real time, in public, largely without the benefit of hindsight or a cultural conversation that was ready to be sympathetic to a child of divorce caught in tabloid crossfire. Her younger half-siblings are growing up in a very different media landscape, one that's at least somewhat more literate about the effects of that kind of exposure on kids, even if it hasn't necessarily gotten any less invasive. In 2023, Ireland became a mother herself, welcoming her daughter, Holland, with her partner, musician Andre Alan Anjos, who performs under the name RAC. Becoming a parent seems to have shifted something in how she talks about her own childhood. She's been more reflective about the past, while also being clear that she wants a different, more private kind of life for her own daughter than the one she had. Interestingly, Ireland has also spoken warmly about her relationship with her stepmother, Hilaria, at one point crediting Hilaria's steadiness with helping her father through some of the hardest years of his life. It's a reminder that this family's relationships don't always follow the script tabloids like to write for them. Of everyone with the last name Baldwin, Ireland is the only one who's had enough time and distance to fully define who she is outside of her father's shadow. That's not a small thing, and it sets her apart from her 7 younger half-siblings, who are all still very much in the middle of figuring that out. Prosecutors attempted to appeal that dismissal, but by December 2024, the New Mexico Attorney General's office declined to pursue the appeal further, and the special prosecutor withdrew it, effectively closing the criminal case for good. Separately, the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served an 18-month sentence, while Assistant Director David Halls pleaded no contest to a lesser charge. Civil lawsuits connected to Hutchins' death have continued in the years since, even after the criminal case ended. For Alec's youngest children, that entire ordeal is simply part of the world they were born into, a household that spent years under intense legal and media pressure, while also just trying to function as a family with a newborn or 2 in the mix. During the family's TLC series, Alec has spoken about being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress related to the aftermath of the shooting, and about how difficult it was to try to shield his children from the constant coverage, while also processing his own grief and legal jeopardy. It's a genuinely heavy thing to have running underneath the everyday chaos of raising 7 kids under 12. Despite all of that, the family has leaned further into public life rather than away from it. The Baldwins premiered on TLC in February 2025, giving audiences a structured, produced look at daily life in the household. Sibling squabbles, birthday parties, the sheer logistics of getting 7 kids fed and out the door. Hilaria has also continued to build her own public career alongside motherhood, including a stint as a contestant on Dancing with the Stars in its 2025 season. Whatever people think of the choice to put that much of a large family's daily life on camera, it's clearly a decision this particular family has made deliberately and repeatedly, not something that happened to them by accident. So where does that leave the 8 of them, all these years later? Ireland is the one clear example of what it looks like to grow up under Baldwin-level scrutiny and come out the other side with a defined, independent identity, one she built through her career, her openness about her own struggles, and eventually motherhood. Carmen, at just over a decade old, is already stepping into a public role of her own, co-authoring a book and appearing regularly on a national television show, which raises real questions, the kind child development experts have been asking for years, about what it means to grow up documented from birth in the era of social media and reality TV. Raphael, Leonardo, Romeo, and Eduardo are still young enough that they don't have much of an individual public narrative yet. They mostly appear as part of the group, the chaotic, energetic middle of a very large household. And Maria, Lucia, and Hilaria, the two youngest, were born directly into the aftermath of the Rust tragedy, meaning their entire lives so far have unfolded against a backdrop of legal proceedings and intense media attention that neither of them had any part in creating. What ties all 8 of these kids together isn't really their personalities or their ages. It's the fact that none of them chose the name they were born with or the attention that comes attached to it. Ireland has had the most time to wrestle with that reality in public, and she's done it by speaking candidly, pushing back when she feels a story about her is wrong, and building a life that's recognizably hers. The younger 7 are still at the very beginning of that same process, growing up with cameras already rolling, in a household that has decided, for better or worse, that living out loud is simply part of being a Baldwin. Whether that openness serves them well as they get older is something none of us can answer yet. Ireland's story suggests it's possible to survive a complicated, very public childhood and still come out grounded. Whether her younger siblings get to write a similar ending is a question this family, and the rest of us watching from the outside, will only be able to answer with time. If you found this rundown interesting, let me know in the comments which of Alec Baldwin's children you think has the most compelling story so far. And if you want more deep dives into the families behind Hollywood's biggest headlines, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. 8 kids, 2 marriages, one of the most photographed families in America, and a name that has been dragged through custody battles, a national gun tragedy, and a citizenship scandal that made headlines for a decade. If you've ever wondered what it's actually like to grow up as a Baldwin, not the version you see in a magazine spread, but the real, complicated version, stick around, because this family story is stranger and more layered than most people realize. Alec Baldwin has 1 daughter from his first marriage to actress Kim Basinger, and 7 children with his current wife, Hilaria Baldwin. That's 8 kids born across nearly 3 decades into 2 completely different eras of his life, and 2 completely different kinds of childhood. Some of these children are adults now, carving out careers and families of their own. Others are still learning how to read. And every single one of them shares a last name that comes loaded with fame, controversy, and a level of public scrutiny most families never have to think about. Let's start with the one who's had the most time to live it, Ireland Baldwin. Ireland was born in 1995, the only child from Alec's marriage to Kim Basinger. Their divorce, finalized in 2002, turned into one of the messiest, most public custody battles Hollywood had seen in years, and Ireland was at the center of it before she was old enough to understand what any of it meant. Then, in 2007, things got worse. A private voicemail Alec left for Ireland, she was 11 at the time, was leaked to the media. In it, an angry Alec called her a rude, thoughtless little pig and threatened to straighten her out. The recording aired everywhere. It became one of those tabloid moments that just wouldn't die, replayed for years afterward anytime Alec Baldwin's name came up. What's easy to forget is that a real kid was on the other end of that story. Ireland didn't get to just be a daughter going through a hard divorce. She became a headline, a talking point, a symbol people used to argue about whether her father was a monster or just a flawed man who lost his temper on a bad day. Either way, which brings us to the second half of this family, the 7 children Alec shares with his wife, Hilaria. Before getting into who they are, it's worth understanding the woman at the center of that second chapter, because Hilaria's own story became a major, unavoidable part of her children's public narrative. Hilaria was born Hilary Lynn Hayward Thomas in Boston, Massachusetts, to American parents. For years, in interviews and on television, she spoke with a slight accent, referenced growing up partly in Mallorca, and generally left the impression that she was Spanish. In December 2020, that persona unraveled almost overnight. Old interviews resurfaced, journalists started digging, and social media users pieced together old yearbook photos and childhood clips that told a much more ordinary, all-American story than the one she'd been presenting for years. The backlash was fast and brutal. She became a viral case study in online identity and authenticity, and the story dominated entertainment news cycles for weeks, complete with side-by-side compilations of old interviews where her accent seemed to come and go. Hilaria has since addressed the criticism directly on multiple occasions, acknowledging the confusion she caused while also pushing back on parts of how the story was framed, and pointing out that she did genuinely spend significant time in Spain growing up. Whatever your take on it, that controversy became part of the backdrop her children have grown up in, a family whose public image was, at least once, shown to be more complicated than it first appeared, and one that had to publicly rebuild some trust with its audience as a result. Now, to the kids themselves. Carmen Gabriela Baldwin, born in August 2013, is Alec and Hilaria's oldest child together. She's grown up almost entirely in the public eye, featured regularly on her mother's social media, and more recently on the family's TLC reality series, The Baldwins, which premiered in early 2025. In 2024, Carmen even co-authored a book with her mother called Glowing Up: Recipes to Rock Your Natural Beauty, focused on skincare and navigating beauty standards as a young person. She's often described by her parents as the responsible one, the built-in helper in a house full of younger siblings. Then came a fast run of sons. Raphael Thomas Baldwin arrived in June 2015, followed by Leonardo Angel Charles in September 2016, Romeo Alejandro David in May 2018, and Eduardo, known as Edu, in September 2020. That's 4 boys in 5 years on top of Carmen, meaning Alec became a father of 6 young children while he was already in his late 50s and early 60s. It's a detail that drew plenty of commentary at the time, some of it admiring, some of it openly skeptical about the logistics and long-term realities of that kind of age gap. By the time his youngest children are teenagers, Alec will be in his 80s, a fact that doesn't show up in a cute Instagram caption, but is a real part of what this family's future looks like. The 2 youngest are Maria Lucia Victoria, born in early 2021, and Hilaria Catalina Irina, born in September 2022, rounding the family out at 7 children with Hilaria and 8 in total including Ireland. Maria Lucia was born via surrogate, just months apart in age from her brother Edu, which Hilaria has spoken about openly, including publicly addressing criticism she received over the choice to use a surrogate, stating clearly that she doesn't see any difference between the daughter carried by a surrogate and the 6 children she carried herself. Maria Lucia's early life and then Hilaria's arrival the following year both happened in the shadow of one of the darkest chapters in Alec Baldwin's career. In October 2021, while filming the Western movie Rust in New Mexico, a prop revolver Alec was holding during a rehearsal discharged a live round. The bullet killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injured director Joel Souza. It was a genuine tragedy, and it triggered years of investigation, criminal charges, and an intense, sustained media cycle that followed the family for years afterward. The legal process was long and complicated. Baldwin was charged with involuntary manslaughter, pleaded not guilty, and the case went through multiple prosecutors and delays before finally going to trial in July 2024. Just days into that trial, the judge dismissed the charges with prejudice, meaning they could never be refiled, after finding that prosecutors had improperly withheld evidence from the defense.